Okay, so one last thing. Um, I figured this would come up as these shows go along. There tends to be a rhetoric that is divisive, dangerous, and violent, right? So I want to go over a list. I drafted up, the last few minutes of things that I disavow, right? So I'm going to go through them. I hope you know that when I speak, even just speaking these things, it morally outrages me. Okay, so keep that in mind. So don't get offended. Okay, if any of these things are too offensive, please hit that mute button because this is dangerous. This is terrible stuff. So things I disavow, right? Violence. First off, it's the worst. Nothing has ever been accomplished through violence. Um, like you look at most recently the Iraq War, right? We didn't storm Baghdad with tanks and bombs and people that wanted to murder people, right? That's not how we got success in Iraq. We got success by bringing our diplomats, bless these people's hearts, these diplomats, right, to go down into the Middle East and Iraq and speak to these people and win their hearts and minds, right? So violence, throw that out. That's never accomplished anything, right? Threats of violence, these are even worse than actual violence. Threats of violence, I can't even. I don't even know why you would do it. It's um, you know and joking aside, if I were to have a motto on violence, which I don't, right, but if I were to have a motto on violence, it would be this: uh, under promise and over deliver. Remember that: under promise, over deliver. Right? But I don't have that. Racial statistics, right? Those, just ignore those, right? Those, if you bring those up, like, I'm not going to acknowledge them. I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to probably bring up the fact that you're a violent person. That's usually my go-to. If people come up with racial statistics, I just say that they're violent people, um, because you don't actually want to argue these statistics. It's just a waste of your time. So I disavow that. Will to power, right? The will to power kind of comes from both of these last two topics, right? Because will to power involves violence, and it involves an understanding of groups of people, right? In relation to the individual person. So we want, let's just get rid of that, right? Democracy is much better. Will to power it's violent, it's dangerous, it's deadly, it's scary. So we're going to focus on democracy, liberal discussion, places where people can come together and discuss ideas. That's what we want, right? One thing that we don't want to discuss, which I also disavow, is ethno-nationalism. Like, just it coming off of my mouth just at least a putrid taste in my mouth. Ethno-nationalism, right? Like, why would people want to live with their own people? Like, you don't see animals. You don't see animals do that in the animal kingdom. You don't see different, you don't see breeds of bears living, or excuse me, that's a bad example. You don't see breeds of seagulls living with other birds. You don't see a certain breed of gazelle living with other gazelles or deer, or what have you. You don't see them. Excuse me, you don't see them living among their own little species, their own little groups, right? That's preposterous. So you just you know what? Don't even think about it. Ethno-national, just gross. Another one is masculinity, right? This is the it's the worst, right? Um, just throw it out there. Second, another thing I disavow: weightlifting, especially those compound lifts like squat, deadlift, bench press, military press. They're the worst, right? If you're gonna lift, if you have to lift, right? Because it's natural for some organisms to want to have exercise. Like Siberian Huskies, they're a breed of dogs that were bred to get adequate amounts of exercise and run for miles and miles and miles all day, right? So if you're that breed of person, which let's this will be the only time I kind of try to entangle biological laws with human nature, right? That's the last time I'm going to do that. But if you are that breed, right, of animal, of human being, right, and you have to exercise, make sure you're using cable lifts, light weights. Make sure to drink lots of protein shakes. Don't eat real food. Protein shakes, right? That's the way to go. I disavow standing true to your values. That's not going to get you anywhere, right? Don't stand true to your values. If you have a value and somebody calls you out on it, it's best to just lie and say you don't actually hold that value. That's the best way to do it. Saying the truth comes. Don't don't do that. Work ethic is that's just a continuation of white masculinity. Work ethic, and like having a time schedule. That's best to just wake up late, do whatever you want, show up late to work. You know, if your job makes you work 9 hours a day, best to just quit the job and get a job that's 8. Because like if you have to, if you're working all day, 8 hours days, you have to stay like 15 minutes after, like that's cutting into your personal time that you could be spending, playing video games or watching Netflix. So just, yeah, don't work ethic out with the work ethic. Another one is honesty, right? Don't just don't do that, right? Like, you look at, some of the Greek philosophers, they had a lot to say about honesty. And I'll, just to let you know, all those guys were white men, right? So throw that out there. Productive goal making, none of that, right? That's not going to get you anywhere. To be honest, really any political ideology that isn't democracy. Like everybody knows that in the last 7,000 years of human history and human society, that regime changes have most often came from civil discussion in a public place and a peaceful transfer of power. Everyone knows that. And that's the way we should do it. Look at the U.S. Government policy on regime changes. I mean, we've always done it peacefully and transparently. The United States has, never bombed schools and hospitals and places like that to, influence regime changes or, force obedience to international law. We've never done that. We're a peaceful country, right? Um, in real life activism, this is really important. Best to just not do any in real life activism. Best to just hide away, hide in the woods. Woods is great. Rivers, play in rivers, sand. Like you can make little balls of sand and throw them at people, and go pew pew pew. Right, the woods is best. Right, don't do that in real life activism. That's just don't do that. Yeah, just stay away from it. Another one, meat. Oh man, meat. Fish like salmon, tilapia, ribeye steak, um, chicken. Don't liver. Don't just meat is a disavow meat for sure. Guns. That's guns the worst, right? They are just avoid them completely. Don't post pictures of them. Don't talk about them. Yeah, much better. Democracy is much better. Coffee and other stimulants, right? This is bad because coffee and other stimulants, they will cause you to do things and want to get things done, right? If you're going to do a stimulant, best to do something that makes you tired and depressed, right? Instead of like excited, outgoing, and ready to do stuff. They'll just coffee, stimulants, stay away from them. They're bad, right? Hiking is another one. Best to just if you're gonna do sports, right? Make sure you're playing basketball. No weightlifting, no hiking, none of that, right? That's implicitly white, so just don't do that. Discipline's another one. I disavow writing books. Best to just sit online and pretend that you're uber intelligent and then never actually document or record your thoughts. So none of that. I wanted to also disavow barbecue. Barbecue is implicitly white, and also usually involves meat. To be fair, so none of that. And science has shown that people on a vegan diet have higher IQs on average. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Cars that aren't imported, right? Stay away from those. And the trucks are the worst. Just don't even buy trucks. Cows, right? Don't wear boots, especially black leather ones. Those are fairly the worst boots to have. Dogs, no. Best to just have a cat or some other animal. Just don't own dogs. They're the worst. Uh, and poetry with a scheme that isn't played over a sick beat, right? Don't stay away from that. I disavow poetry. If I see any poetry in my comment section, I'm gonna shadow ban you. I'm gonna delete your comment. I'm gonna track you down, and I'm gonna write you an angry letter. So no poetry. And last and most importantly, I want to disavow Hitler. Worst guy. Worst. He had dogs. Um, he may have driven like something that resembled the truck once, which is, bad enough for me. He did in real life activism. He had discipline, honor, and honesty. He was, at the time, he was masculine. He fought in a war. He was violent, right? So disavow Hitler. Totally. Okay. I'm going to be doing these videos, and there's going to be a lot, and there's going to be a lot of, topics that I actually disavow, right? But I'm going to talk about them as if I don't disavow them, right? So like everything said in future videos is totally satire, totally satire. When I speak about ethno-nationalism and white people's will to power, I'm only speaking ironically, right? Although I might support extremist views, I actually don't. I actually don't. And so everything discussed or stemming from the discussion um, is ironic and shouldn't be taken seriously. Whites only make the world worse. So anything white should be done away with. Hail victory, but only through democracy, civil discussion, and half measures. Thank you.